Welcome to session number 9. And this is all about forgiveness and letting go. And I know that people at the end of their marriages, when they're starting to unravel that marriage, move into different homes, raise their kids separately, that there's sometimes a lot of resentment that's held on to. It's like trying to keep that person on the hook. Like they have to be accountable for the pain that they caused me, disappointment and abandonment. And I agree that about the pain, but I also think when you try to keep someone else on the hook and being accountable for the pain that they caused you, you're actually just staying paralyzed yourself and not moving forward. And so you don't give your kids that model of like, you're going to be okay, and therefore they're going to be okay. So it's so common that I see one person in the scenario who usually is the recipient. Sometimes it's the initiator because they're like, hey, this person just wouldn't change. And so I had um, no choice but to end the relationship. And I didn't want to, but I still want them, or I still want to punish them for what they did. It's really important to look at what is that doing to you? What is holding on, wanting them to pay for their crimes, doing to you? And so let's break it down. Some of what you need to do is to look at the loss of your dream. So, what was the dream? Growing old together, both, kids having both parents around, staying in a house that you really, really felt so proud of. Maybe you have to give up something like your retirement fund or just the family that you had with the other person. And so there's grief, right? And there's pain and there's abandonment. Like I thought I was important to you forever. And to face that is sometimes the most difficult thing to do. And so with grief, like we face as much as we can at a time and make baby steps, right? If it's so intense. I talk about this as like sometimes there's a really um, emotional book that you might have on your bookshelf and you read it sometimes and you can always get kind of like teary about it or like really emotional. And so sometimes we look at the grief and the loss, and then we have to put it away, just like putting that book back on the shelf, because we can't look at the grief all the time and move forward at the same time. So I really want you to identify who you are in this partnership and why you're keeping that other person on the hook. I've seen people just like they're still angry after 10 years, a decade, longer, that there's still this like, don't talk about that person in my presence. So, what is that about? Sometimes I think it's like that negative connection. It's the way people try to stay connected, even though they can't stay connected in a positive way. So, I want you to really understand and look at if that's you. If that's the person that you've been with, and I know you've been infected, it doesn't mean that I don't think that there was something that went on that wasn't okay. It means that you might have to do your um your own, what would it be? Not repenting or anything, but it's more like understand that you did cause somebody harm and to be accountable for the harm that you caused. And you don't really need to do that to your kids. You don't need to say that to your kids, or you might say, that made me feel really bad, or it makes me feel really bad that that person's having a hard time. But at some point, it's that person who's having a hard time, who can't let go's responsibility to figure out how they're going to move on and move forward with their life, because life is important and we don't have a lot of time to live our lives. Like it's not a dress rehearsal. We don't get to do it again. But how do you continue to drop the thing that is causing you so much pain? That is the biggest question. So if you're dropping it, if you're saying like, hey, I'm not going to carry this fight any longer. I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to honor what mattered to me about the relationship and also what matters to me now going forward. That doesn't mean that you're giving up. It doesn't mean that you're winning, that the other person is winning. It means that you're no longer going to make yourself suffer in the pain of what didn't work in the marriage or the way that person changed or the loss of the dream. You're not going to keep suffering in that, in the midst of that. A lot of times people tell me, well, that person just like ended the marriage or and they're doing great. They're doing better than they ever were. And again, it's not a contest, it's not a competition. And that doesn't mean if you're taking longer to put your life together that you failed. It just means sometimes that people have different measures of how they get through things. And it also, sometimes I hear people say they didn't do any work on themselves. And I'm like doing all the work on myself and I'm still struggling. And usually, what I think about with that is like if that person didn't identify their part of the relationship ending and their dynamics, they're going to keep doing that, whether they got into another relationship really quickly or maybe they just figured out how to find a person that wanted to live with the kinds of dynamics that were their side of the dynamics, and that person's not as bothered by them as not that it means that there's something wrong if you were bothered by them, but they don't have the same sense of mental health or mental well-being as you did. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It means that it's a difference. It was an incompatibility or grave incompatibility. So what you have to really do is shift the narrative. Like some of the healthier narratives I hear is there are really good parts of my marriage. I was really grateful that we had the children that we had. I love those children more than anything. And then there were parts of the marriage that just didn't work. And I tried and tried and tried to make that marriage work, and it didn't. Or I felt like that person had mental health issues or issues that I could not work with. And so it needed to end, even though I didn't want it to. It needed to end so that I could move forward, so that I could be free. And even if your freedom looks really different from what your life looked like before, it's your life now. You're in charge of it. You're in charge of all of it. You're in charge of what's next for you. So create some mantras that help change the narrative so that you're no longer a victim to this story, even if you were. But you are someone who's actually taking the information that you got from the ending of this relationship and promising yourself to investigate people a little bit more if you're wanting to get really close to them, to talk about your own vulnerabilities, to really understand the dynamics that seem like dynamics you fall into with people. We all have the position that we learned to create based on our family of origin or just the way that we acclimate and operate in the world. But you get to have a choice whether you want to continue those dynamics or not. So I hope that you'll choose to look at yourself, to do the work, to find peace, and to know that your life is valuable beyond the holding the grudge, beyond they have to pay, beyond if I let go, they're not going to feel the pain. I have to remind them of that. Set yourself free as much as you can. And if you haven't found a way to do that, then get some help because there's all different ways that you can sort of be more in the present and be more in gratitude about your life now.